We also worked together with the Omidyar network, who Mr. Omidyar is politically very active in Hawaii on some agriculture and energy issues. And the question there basically was, well, what kind of coalition of lawmakers do I need to bring together to make Hawaii's energy and agricultural policy more sustainable? And we basically simulated that. So we collected data on all those different lawmakers, collected data also on their preferences, political preferences, and on their past voting behavior. And then tried, using simulation, to craft coalitions with which they would have to go together in order, through the regular legal process, to come up with, or to basically push through those sustainable policies in which the Omidyar network believes is the best for Hawaii's future. And here I have to apologize, I didn't change the picture, I'm sorry, but this one is actually the most boring picture, because it's just simply a collection of bar charts on some health data. But here with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the question was basically, okay, in some sub-Saharan countries, with what kind of policies do we have to come up in order to find the best public health initiatives for a specific region? And what we combined here, and some of you might have followed the Ebola outbreak coverage in Nature and Science. One of the biggest problems with some of those public health initiatives is not the data on, or the socio-demographic data, it's actually the behavioral data. They got constantly wrong for a long period of time in their response to Ebola, the behaviors of communities at risk and those who are affected. And that apparently was one of the main reasons why for such a long time they couldn't contain it. So we were confronted here with a very similar challenge. And then that's what Stefan mentioned. Out of all those simulation projects, at some point the desire arose in our team to come up with a simulation that has not to be built from scratch, or almost from scratch. And we tried to find a domain in which we could reuse the simulation, or in other words, basically scale it. And that was marketing, social media marketing, because we were of the opinion that large companies are basically consistently paying Facebook, Twitter, and all those various platforms too much money without actually knowing what they're getting out of it. I mean, the best example in 2017 was Procter & Gamble, who slashed in one quarter, I think it was the second one, $120 million from their social media activities. And the CFO basically said, but we didn't really see a change in our trend of sales, so why are we actually spending that money for? So that's a little bit the demand we felt, and therefore we built this simulation model of, if you will, communication in social media. Or in other words, we built an application, a SaaS application that helps us to optimize and automate social media campaigns. For that, we first crawl various social media channels for the data. We basically want to understand who talks about what given topic, and then simulate within this topology a social media campaign, and try to understand how much budget you need, which audiences do you need to reach, with which influencers do you need to work together, and so forth, in order to have the greatest bang for the buck. So that's basically the idea. And what is new here is that there is a clear expectation that the client can actually work together with this, can work alone with this simulation platform, and just imputes a small number of parameters, duration of the campaign, budget, the purpose of the campaign, and so forth, and gets after a few seconds the results, as based on the results, gets everything needed that needs to be used for the Twitter, Facebook, and so forth campaign managers, and can launch his social media campaign directly from our platform. And then, while the social media campaign is running, the platform continues to collect data and continuously optimizes the social media campaign while it is running until the stated objectives have been achieved. So based on this, where do I think this whole social simulation movement actually goes? So I should actually note here that I'm also the secretary of the European Social Simulation Association. If you want to help us grow this community, join us, would be great. But apart from pure member numbers, I think there are a number of directions social simulation goes. First, with regard to strategy, I think that strategic decisions, whether that's now for governments, whether that's for companies, for non-profits and so forth, become more and more costly because the environments they're actually operating in become more and more complex. So simulations are actually a nice way of mitigating wrong decisions. So in other words, C-levels start to simulate their strategic decisions first before they're actually implementing it, because it's just too costly to run an experiment. Secondly, optimizations. Companies will continuously work on ways how to optimize their business model, nothing new, but will more and more also rely on introspective simulation. There's a huge team working at Amazon, the online retailer, amongst other activities, that just do nothing else than simulating themselves, including for their cloud activities. And they're using these kind of simulations to just basically get better every day. I know Adidas is going into a similar directions in combination with their 3D printing activities and so forth. There is also a clear indication that companies will want in the future to outsmart their competitors using these kind of decision support systems. The military is already doing it, so there will be only a short step from, in this case, although that largely ended, but from the military to transferring this kind of technology into corporate decision making. Then also from a regulatory point of view, social simulations produce data that is extremely is of a high fidelity nature and can be used as decision making, as the basis of decision making as such. In other words, while regulatory requirements increase with regard to data collection and usage of that data, in particular socio-demographic data, you can basically just simulate, in other words, create a synthetic population and use that for the decision support. And finally, the idea is also to move social simulations out of the B2B space into applications that are accessible to customers like you and me, and to use it on an everyday basis, not as simply as the SBB app or so that just gives you some suggestions for when trains run, but to really help you make strategic decisions more cleverly. And this, I believe, will also change how this symmetry between corporates and customers is being perceived today, and will shift the power even further to